There was a source over the weekend that shared some details with me on a story, and it may well be that the local college, that is the College of Southern Idaho, along with its allies at the local newspaper, along with their allies at the Refugee Resettlement Program, may be looking to bus people in tomorrow night for a program the newspaper is sponsoring in conjunction with its allies in order to give the impression that there are more people in support of the latest refugee resettlement plan in the Magic Valley. In other words, buses will be coming from as far away as Boise, depositing people at this meeting so that they can take pictures of a large crowd of people with placards saying, "We support the program, and isn't this wonderful, and isn't this great?" So that they can then turn around and say, "This community overwhelmingly supports this program and the resettlement of Syrian refugees." Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Also, what we're going to be talking about this morning, a fellow coming along in a few minutes. There is, on Thursday night, a rally going on in Twin Falls in support of the Second Amendment and constitutional carry. We'll get some details on that in just about 15 minutes on the program. Coming up at about 8:40 or so this morning, Randy Staples will join us from Idaho Weekly Briefing. He has a great deal to talk about. The cost for fighting fires, wildfires in Idaho and across the Northwest, just astronomical this year, and there's a bit of a debate on who's going to pay for all of it. And Idaho taxpayers could be on the hook for a great deal of that. I mean, you're talking whatever budget surplus we've seen could get eaten up by the recent wildfires. A handful of them still burning, but obviously much smaller than they were just a few weeks ago. Tomorrow night, your local newspaper is conducting this program at the College of Southern Idaho. And what they've done is they've stacked it with a group of people who all have an interest in this, especially a monetary interest in this program going forward. Oh, it's just a community service to answer questions. No, it's to try to recruit people. They will not give you any alternatives. They will not tell you about the social costs of all of this. And the story goes, and I found this on a website over the weekend called TVOI. That's it, TVOI, and Voice of Idaho. And I was looking it over, and the writer says that there is a large organization out of Boise that is planning to bus people in for this meeting tomorrow. Now, I in all fairness, I don't understand the need for that. It seems to me that if you really want a public hearing on this, and you want the public opinion, you would stay away from trying to taint what you're doing, because once knowledge of that gets out, then people say this is a setup. 10 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're supposed to have temperatures near 90 a few days this week. In fact, I think Friday 90, but our cool start this morning, at 50. I wore shorts today in hopes that it would be much more comfortable. Luckily, in our studio, it isn't 900 degrees yet. That happens about 9 o'clock most mornings, so that's on the way. We'll heat things up, though, before this program is over. Letter to the editor in that local newspaper that I'm referencing. This is coming from a fellow by the name of John Ellis, writing from here in Twin Falls, and he says he does not believe that County Prosecutor Grant Loebs is right when he says that the petition to have a vote on this, a public referendum on shutting down this program, is unconstitutional. The writer says this: the federal government controls air commerce, but Twin Falls has an airport because of the value that airport is to the community and our economy, not because the federal government controls air commerce or requires us to have an airport. And the writer says, I don't believe that there is any constitutional or legal requirement that CSI have a refugee center. Having said that, he says, I would oppose and vote against any ballot measure seeking to prevent such a center. It is an asset, not a liability. Now, I think he's making a point here. Sometimes it's not a bad thing to resettle some people who are being oppressed in other parts of the world. We did it after the Vietnam War with a great many of our allies whose lives were endangered after the fall of Saigon. The writer says the resettlement of Syrian refugees in the U.S. generally, and the Magic Valley specifically, though, is another issue. Syria today, he writes, is a nation with an effective government. Without an effective government, and he goes on to say, neither the heavy-handed and national administration nor the rebels are our friends. The government says they will carefully screen the refugees, but that is empty rhetoric. They can't even screen the millions of illegal aliens, Mr. Ellis writes, who are in the nation already. To welcome Syrians to our shore at this time in history, he writes, is a fool's errand. And then I happened to come across this in a British newspaper called The Telegraph, a writer by the name of, well, he's British after all, Simon Heffer. Simon Heffer, writing in the London Telegraph, it is much easier to attack when you are further away from the front line or when, like the Germans, you have in living memory committed grotesque crimes against humanity for which you still feel the need to make atonements. Many Europeans, and he says, I suspect this includes a fair number of Germans too, though, beneath their holier-than-thou exteriors, feel they ought to be consulted before their political leaders change the fundamental nature of their cultures. And then he says this, recent figures show just in 1 in 5 migrants are Syrians fleeing civil war. Everyone else includes not just those from Africa or Asia who are simply looking for a welfare state to settle down in, but those from the Middle East posing as refugees who are returning to Europe to engage in acts of terrorist murder. And then on page 3 of his column from yesterday, he says this, there has also been a tolerance of multiculturalism that has led many Britons to feel we harbor some communities of immigrants who are not only hostile to the indigenous way of life, that means the local way of life, the local culture, but wish fundamentally to alter it. If you did not hear, the father of the clock boy down in Texas has been campaigning to institute Sharia law in his area. That part the media hasn't been telling you. Just to give you an aside to all of this, this writer goes on to say, if a democratic nation has a consensus about its way of life, with whom most people are happy, by what right, other than by the agreement of those same people, can it be changed? In other words, how can people in government come along and just simply say, we're going to unload hundreds, if not thousands, maybe millions of refugees upon you? The public needs to be consulted. That is the notion of representative democracy. 8:14. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. So we have people in government who are telling us, no, this is going to be fine, shut up. And they're not going to listen to the overall public mood on this because they like to tell you they know better. Brought to you by a government that has given you an $18 trillion debt. Meanwhile, Ben Carson, speaking on NBC yesterday, Meet the Press. Oh, my Lord, did he ever stir up a hornet's nest when he said he would not support a Muslim for President of the United States.
If it fits within the realm of America and consistent with the Constitution, no problem.
So do you believe that Islam is consistent with the Constitution?
No, I don't. I do not.
Now, in case you missed what he just said,
I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that.
Now, he didn't say that we're going to restrain Muslims from being president. He didn't say I'm calling for a constitutional amendment that would bar Muslims from being president. He didn't say I will lock them in jail first before they could ever take office as president. He simply said, well, I wouldn't vote for one as president of the United States. He said he'd vote for some in Congress, and he might vote for some in some other legislative elections. You realize media has been saying Donald Trump should not be allowed near the nuclear trigger. That's okay. But you cannot say that a Muslim should not be allowed near the largest nuclear arsenal in the history of the world. That might hurt somebody's feelings. To give you an indication of how the media reacted to all of this, this is NBC Nightly News following that program last night.
Dr. Ben Carson is now under fire for comments he made today to our own Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. Carson saying he does not believe a Muslim should be president. His remarks now another distraction for the Republican Party. NBC's Hallie Jackson joins us with more.
How is it a distraction for the Republican Party? Can anyone explain that to me? When most Americans probably hear that and say, yeah, dang straight. I mean, he's right on. How is this a distraction? Oh, but good golly, he's insulted these people, and you never know. Now they might get angry, and they might go out and blow up buildings and fly airplanes into them, and we couldn't have that. Donald Trump making an appearance on CNN yesterday, the Communist News Network, and the host of a program there by the name of Jake Tapper decided to editorialize because Trump failed to denounce a questioner at a town hall event in New Hampshire last week who said that Muslims couldn't be trusted, and he thought that the President of the United States was a Muslim. This is Tapper with his editorial comment. Listen to Trump's response.
You are running to be president of the United States of America. That includes millions of peaceful, law-abiding Muslim American citizens who love this country. This man said, quote, "We have a problem in this country. It's called Muslims." Now, you are not responsible for what he says, but this is raw, unvarnished, ignorant bigotry. You are a leader. You're the front runner in the Republican race. Do you not have a responsibility to call out?
Well, you know, we could be politically correct if you want, but certainly, are you trying to say we don't have a problem? Because I think everybody would agree. I have friends that are Muslims. They're great people, amazing people, and most Muslims, like most everything, I mean, these are fabulous people, but we certainly do have a problem. I mean, you have a problem throughout the world.
What's the problem?
Well, you have radicals that are doing things. I mean, it wasn't people from Sweden that blew up the World Trade Center, Jake.
Duh. Well, yeah, okay. But, gee willikers, I don't want to hurt their feelings anymore. Maybe they blew it up because we hurt their feelings in the first part. Being Americans, we're bad, 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 Mr. Trump. Don't you understand that? And we owe the rest of the world, so therefore we have to sacrifice 3,000 of our fellow countrymen. When I hear that kind of line, and I was trying to write this down as quickly as I could, this is an objective journalist saying, raw, unvarnished, ignorant bigotry. I think that was the quote about the man who happened to be in the crowd. Just because you don't trust someone doesn't make you a bad person, Mr. Tapper. 818, we have a caller with us. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX.
Good morning. But, it's really interesting, those comments. But if you take a really look at our domestic and foreign policies, regardless of what religion our president is, he's certainly supporting an Islamic agenda in this country by allowing all these immigrants into this country. And look, the mess he created over in Iraq and so forth by pulling our troops out there and allowing ISIS to just take our Humvees and do what they're doing right now.
And they encouraged his administration and his Secretary of State at the time. She encouraged these revolutions by all of these people in that part of the world that have kicked all of this off.
Yeah, look how that's working out for everybody. But, the comment about all these refugees going to be bussed down here, folks, that's our tax money. They're not paying the nickel on that. We're paying the nickel to have these people bussed down here if that actually occurs. That should be protested at the highest level. I mean, this is unbelievable, the cheerleading for this program. That is a failed program in a lot of ways and needs to be stopped.
I thank you much for the call. It shows you the scoundrels who are behind this event tomorrow will stop at nothing to get what they want and try and convince you it's good for you. 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. We've got a guest coming up in just a couple of minutes, in fact. He's going to be talking about an event involving the Second Amendment and support for constitutional carry. That's on the way. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 50 at 8:20. Just wanted to let you know that coming up on Wednesday, Dr. Jonathan Tripp is scheduled to be in studio with us. Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. We do that every Wednesday morning. I was at an event at Cactus Pete's over the weekend, an outdoor concert, out in the sunshine, beautiful day on Saturday. Got to hear a great band from my childhood by the name of Grand Funk Railroad, and just really enjoyed the event. There must have been 1,500 bikes there, too, as well. Snake Harley Davidson was involved in the project, and so this is quite a party atmosphere. But being out in the sun like that at an outdoor event for hours on end can obviously damage your skin. Dr. Tripp is going to talk some more about sun damage this coming week, how to get back your skin, its natural elasticity, I guess, following summer after you've been out a lot as we head toward winter. And so we'll talk a little bit about that and perhaps some of the long-term concerns you should have about too much exposure to the sun. Remember, tune in each Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. for Better Health, brought to you by Tripp Family Medicine in Twin Falls, located across from the main post office on Fillmore in Twin Falls. And one line that the doctor always likes to recite, life's too short not to feel good. Details ahead, of course, on that. We have a guest joining us. It's 8:23, 50. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. First of all, Greg Pruitt is going to be doing a lot of traveling this week because he's going to be, in other words, I think you could say he's the guy who's behind a number of rallies taking place across the state, Second Amendment rallies. And first of all, we'd like to say welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mr. Colley. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, Mr. is what's on my driver's license. Just go with Bill. Hey, right off the top, what's the name of the organization?
We are the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance.
And you have a website, too, that people should take a look at. What's the web address?
www.idaho.org.
And you're having these rallies in a series of cities across the state. Thursday in Twin Falls, I believe, just after 5 o'clock, right?
Yes, sir. At 5:30 at Red's Trading Post over in Twin Falls. And some, I've had a lot of questions. Well, why were you doing it on a Thursday? Well, I'm medically retired from the Idaho Army National Guard from some injuries I had in Iraq. And, I'm driving voluntarily. I don't get paid for anything I do. And so we had to set up all these rallies in succession in southern Idaho and then the same up in northern Idaho. So that's why it's on a Thursday, and then you're on your way to Pocatello and some other places as well. So there's going to be a lot of exposure that you've got with this. Yeah, we're based up here in the Treasure Valley in the Boise area, and we really felt like we needed to, go out and reach out and do some rallies in areas where we, normally we do them at the Capitol every year during session, and we felt like we needed to reach out a little bit more, and so that's why we set up these rallies all over the state to try and get more people involved.
And we should note, too, that a lot of people around the country, when they hear Idaho, they think that, this is just the Old West and that it's, very libertarian in its approach to the Constitution and all. But your organization still looking to make some changes in the way we treat gun ownership in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, the gun ownership, the citizens are very pro-gun. A lot of really good gun owners here in the state of Idaho. It's not quite the Wild West that a lot of the other states like to paint us as. The issue we're having right now is our elected officials aren't quite as pro-gun as the people that they represent, and that's one of the things that we're hoping to change.
And that comes down to some issues about carrying, right?
Yeah, permitless carry, or what's commonly called constitutional carry, a really big issue all nationwide. In fact, I think 25 states tried to implement it just this year. And when you have the state of Maine, whose House is run by Democrats, pass permitless carry before Idaho, that's a big red flag for the citizens, or it should be.
You bring that up, and I want to point out to people just tuning in, Greg Pruitt is our guest, and he's joining us this morning. There's a Second Amendment rally in Twin Falls coming up 5:30 on Thursday night. For people who are just tuning in, of course, when we talk about this, the Second Amendment doesn't say anything about needing a permission slip if you're going to carry, does it?
It doesn't at all, and we frequently get, people are going, well, it doesn't say you have the right to conceal, and I said, you're right, it doesn't say the word conceal, it doesn't say anything, it just says you have the right to bear arms. That's entirely up to you whether you do that openly or concealed, and that right shall not be infringed. And for some reason, every time we create these laws, everybody forgets about the last four words there, and that's what we're trying to help restore here in Idaho is getting rid of some of these restrictions on law-abiding citizens who are the only ones abiding by these laws, because the criminals don't do it, obviously.
And you do have some allies in the legislature. We should point that out, that, not everyone is trying to stall this.
That's correct. Yeah, we actually have quite a few legislators who do support permitless carry. The issue we've had is with the leadership, Speaker Bedke, and some others that just had no desire to put it through the last few sessions, really, because we've been trying this since 2013. And that's really been our biggest frustration is, they've been putting forward bills that Idaho gun owners aren't asking for, and they're starting to see some of the backlash of that now.
Do you think that this will be the year that changes?
I really do. From what we've been hearing, there's a lot of movement behind the scenes with the legislators to make this happen. It's how long are we going to sit back and watch other states move forward on real gun legislation? And that's what the legislators and the citizens have had a disconnect on, The citizens are asking for real pro-gun legislation, and the legislators keep putting forward gun bills that we aren't asking for and that really don't accomplish anything. This last session was the worst by far. House Bill 301 absolutely did nothing in terms of expanding or protecting gun rights, and that's where I think they got thousands and thousands of phone calls and emails from Idaho citizens who were not happy that they didn't move forward on permitless carry.
Greg, again, you're going to be here at 5:30 Thursday night in Twin Falls. Once more, where are you going to be?
Red's Trading Post.
And for people who'd like to check out the website, because there's a great deal of information there related to just the Second Amendment all around, what's the web address again?
Yeah, in fact, we have our petition that we just got up last night for permitless carry, but the web address is www.idaho.org.
Hey, good luck. Hope to see you Thursday afternoon, too, as well.
All right, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Oh, and thank you. Greg Pruitt joining us this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Still holding still, 51 now. What do you know? Now we're getting to some balmy early morning weather. 8:30. Hey, Randy Staples will join us in just about 10-15 minutes from Idaho Weekly Briefing. Hope you can stick around for that as well. And I have some details on that kid who was arrested for the clock at his school in Texas coming up.